is January 25th, 2012. We're beginning Psychology of Racism, Blackologist, BBCD, got Brother Joseph, Sister Robin, here to class at this time. Our cultural therapy today will be Dr. Marimba Ani, aka Dr. Richards, Donna Richards, in her book, Kiruga. She's going to talk about the facility, the desire of the European to control the world. And she's going to talk to us about her solution to that problem, the psychology of racism. So today we're just going to begin with discussing some contemporary issues. We're talking about President Obama and his speech last night to the Union, and entering all the things that went on. Some of the things he said that were, the paper today is, yes, that's Marimba Ani. And if you have how you feeling today? If you are ready to present today, you can present today. If not, then we'll continue on with our discussion in contemporary issues, talking about President Obama and his impact on the nation. Anything you would like to share about how you feel about it or what you saw? As I said before, he came in and kissed all the women and shook everybody's hand. Of course, I guess it's a no-brainer that his wife shouldn't be concerned about all those other women because she's the queen. Mm-hmm. And everybody else got to fall in line. But because that's really the first time I saw him give the State of the Union and his entry into the room to do so. I heard Al Sharpton in the background said he had, didn't really want to be in the room, but he was invited. But I know why, because he was one of the media personnel talking in the background, doing media analysts. So, did y'all have any experiences this week with the psychology of racism? Anything you would like to share? Every day, 24/7, 365. The most consistent thing that goes on in this country, whether you know it or not, is racism, white supremacy. And someone made a comment about Michelle Obama in her the relationship as the First Lady. It's always something they're saying about Michelle. Some person is jealousy or envy, saying something negative about what she should be doing and can't be doing. But I believe that she's doing a pretty good job. Because if my wife saw all the women kissing me, president or not, she would have been like, what's going on? So, but the issue is that the president is doing the best that he can do. According to the announcers last night, he's done twice as much as George Bush has in his 2 terms already. Mm-hmm. It is, indeed. Um, we just need to think about how we are going to deal with this psychology of racism, what we're going to do about it, uh, what is our goal in terms of how we're going to deal with it. So we need to, as Dr. Wilson said, tell our children about it, talk about it every day, because if we don't, then it just goes on and on. Denying that it doesn't exist doesn't make it go away. And one of the things that you have to begin every day thinking about is what you are going to do to make things better, not only for yourself, but for your family. And then, what is it that you've learned about the psychology of racism that you didn't know before? We've tried to provide the information as much as we can, but even if we had 365 days in a year, we would not be able to provide all the information, but we've been doing pretty well in terms of Dr. Francis Wilson, Martin Luther King, Bobby Wright. We have taken a look at ethnic notions and the psychological wars. So we're pretty much well abreast in terms of how the psychology of racism works. And according to the white supremacy privilege distribution scale, it works like this. If you are white, you are right. If you are passing, you are right. If you are biracial, you okay. If you multiracial, you okay. If you are a second-class citizen, you're acceptable. If you are a minority, you're okay. If you light, you might. If you yellow, you mellow. If you red, the reservation is your way to get ahead. If you black, get back. And then inside the black culture, all of this applies. So what do we say? We're saying that white supremacy racism, or the psychology of racism, affects us in all ways that we can think about. Religion, sex, war, politics, literature, anything that you can imagine, economics, money. If you pull $1 out right now, even though it's green, the green is in such a way that the face on the dollar, it still appears white. So we have to deal with this thing according to the information that we receive and according to the blueprints or the black prints that have been left to us by those who came before us. What would Harriet Tubman do about the psychology of racism? What would Kwame Nkrumah do about the psychology of racism? These are some questions that we have to ask ourselves so that we can be able to research these individuals, these brothers and sisters, and see what they said we should do. Now, I wrote on the board, if you are African and not thinking black, if you are black and not thinking blackological at this late date, now it's time to start. All cultures think from their cultural sphere. When you talk to an Asian, it used to be Oriental, but the Asians have determined to some degree that they don't want to be Oriental anymore. They want to be Asian. So, but they speak from an Asian perspective. They speak from the culture from which they come from. If you talk to a Briton, Englishman, they speak from the culture from which they come from. Although they've spread their culture linguistically throughout the world, they speak from that perspective. They did not explore the world, conquer the world, and take on the world's language and culture. They took their language there and they transformed whatever land or nation into their language and then their culture. What does that say to us as black people or black African people? It says that we need to evolve into a culture as opposed to communities. Communities are divided. You got the Southeast community, the Southwest community, the Northwest community, the Northeast community. You got North, South, East, and West. They're all divided. But once we begin to see ourselves as a culture, a collective, and the word black gives us this ability to be able to see ourselves collectively, because there are black people on all 7 continents. And when you go there, anyone, and you don't see black people and you are black, you won't get comfortable until you find something. Then you know it's safe. But back to what I was saying, it's time for us to be collective and build a culture that is productive and creative. Blackologically, as black people, we cannot be number one with anyone else until we are number one with ourselves. As black scholars, we want to change the dangling discourse of the psychology of racism into a symphony of justice, redemption, and advancement of black culture. That's what we want to do. Where did I get that from? Martin Luther King. That was a book. There's so many things that we could do and must do in order to be able to deal with the psychology of racism. Because the psychology of racism is white people. English first. People second, third, fourth. It's Spanish first. Spanish is a European term too. Isn't it interesting that in this land, after we've been here for over 400 years, that in the recent 10 to 15 years, the Native Americans who were forced to speak Spanish have begun to leave Mexico, come to the United States, and now they can get a grant for ESOL, English as a second language. And we've been here all this time and we can't get a grant for Ebonics because we haven't looked at ourselves as a culture. We have looked at ourselves as integrating. Since the 1960s, primarily the early 70s, we have seen ourselves as integrating into the Euro-American or European culture as second-class citizens. But that's no longer acceptable for an evolutionary, evolving Blackological mind, or Afrocentric mind, or African-centered mind. It wasn't even acceptable for the Negro nationalism. So then, our goal is to build this, which I'd like to share something.
My son had a traffic ticket. He's 24. He had a traffic ticket. So I went with him to the courthouse. And we were waiting to go in the court, and there was a middle-aged white woman who didn't have a seat. And he offered her his seat. And she almost passed out. Like, I know what she was thinking. You know, that he's a hood rat. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so I was like, wow. She's like, turned red. She was like, oh, no thank you. You know, like, I was like, okay. So I had to let that one slide. But then when we got inside, they were calling the people up, you know, like traffic court. I mean, to me, it's court. I guess some people would think it's traffic court. It was Hispanic, a ton of them. They came up in their t-shirts, there, whatever. And the bailiff was about 20 feet away. And they just kept calling people. And this young black guy came up in a hoodie and baggy jeans. And that bailiff moved about 5 feet from him. No, he moved closer to him, waiting for him to do something so he could jump on him like he had to be ready. Everybody else, he was way back here. When it came to the young black guy, he got right there. And I was like, wow, I said, did you see that too? I was like, you know, I always try to point these things out to him, even though he's 24. I mean, I told him, both my sons, unfortunately, you're black. Not unfortunately, but they're looking at you in a different way. And even driving, when they got their license, I was terrified.
Yes,
young and black driving, so.
You and me both, I got 5 sons.
Yeah, I was. So he was like, yeah, he said, well, Mom, he did come to court in a hoodie and jeans. You know, we were sitting right behind the police. So the police, I was like, did you see the way the man was moving? The police officer kind of like turned around and looked at me. And I was like, hold on, police. I said, you know, I said what I had to say. And he kind of looked at me. He turned back around. I said, see, that's what I'm talking about. This is what I've always told you. And he was the next one. They called my son next for his ticket. And the guy moved back because my son had on a, you know, button-up shirt and khaki. And the guy moved back. I was like, oh my goodness. He moved back 20 feet away. As soon as the black person came up with the hoodie on and the jeans, he moved like 5 feet from the guy.
Yes, right.
But then, you know, I guess he figured, oh, this is a safe one because he got on a dress shirt. And he moved back. I was like, this is ridiculous.
Isn't that something, you know, you talked about two things there. One culture, and the other one is training. Culturally, what was acceptable was the khaki and the button-up shirt. Then we're talking about training is, but he was also when he stepped back, he was also cautious, even though he had on khaki and a button-up shirt, because they was still a black person. Because in the training of the police officer, and I've been through 2 police academies, and there's 3 training academies for security, private and public and government. What they teach us in that academy is that to shoot black targets. They shoot black targets. Everybody has to shoot a black target. It doesn't matter who you are, you're going in and you're shooting black targets. And so that conditions the police officer, black and white, to be aggressive and offensive towards black. And it's a black male target. Here recently they started shooting black female targets. So they're even aggressive with the black woman as well. More black women now are going to jail than ever before. So how do we know that that is significant? How do we know the scientific fact about this black target? Because if you go to a gun range where it's military and you're at war, they practice shooting the target of that individual person or thing that they're in war. So in peacetime, when they're not in war, in peacetime, they practice on shooting black males. So now, I wrote a paper on it, and it's on the internet. If you go to articles, you can see it. I believe it's 7 to 10 pages. And documenting how, right here in Washington, D.C., a black police officer was off work. And he was in the area where the big chair, I'm trying to see what's that area? Southeast. That's southeast, where the big chair is. And so, a squabble between, 2, black males, was going on. And so this black officer was off duty. He came out and pulled his badge out and put it around his neck and went to go break the fight up. And so by the time he got there, 2 white officers came on the scene, slamming brakes, jumping out of their car with their gun out, saw him with a gun and shot him dead. That's not only, that's like one time. That has happened several times throughout the United States and several times in Washington, D.C. because they practice this shooting the black target. So what are we talking about? The psychology of racism, how it works. It's just really, we really have to open our eyes to see it, because as long as we don't talk about it, the more it happens.
I mean, it's good how she observed it and told you something. You see how this...
And I said it on purpose so that the white officers could hear me. I said it purposely.
And you did right,
You should have told them how to.
I mean, I did that, but I was like, does this make sense? I said, look, I said, doesn't even make sense. I said, you see how they react? And he kind of looked for me.
I'm definitely sure if it was somebody else besides being black.
I was saying the Hispanic men were dressed any differently. Yeah.
He would not have. So what are we saying here, as a way of being able to do something about when we see, and you have a trained eye, you're being educated and you're studying this psychology of racism. How do we deal with it in a way that makes the environment we're in less racist, or to be able to disseminate racism from that environment? Is we have to go there and say, you know what, I'm studying the psychology of racism, and what he did was racist because he stepped to the, the black man with the hoodie on, and when he stepped away, he stepped back. That's, racism right there. And just the introduction that you are, educated and doing the research and study in this field of study, the psychology of racism would neutralize immediately everybody in that area that would be thinking that way, and then bring to their conscience. So, that's like, even if you're at work, let them know, the knowledge that you acquire and what you're doing and how you know that this is, what it is. And you can even quote Francis Wells. I study Francis Wells. Dr. King. We studied, these are the things that I studied, ethnic cleansing and psychological wars. These are some of the things that we did. And so when you do that, people will begin to change. And because they know it's somebody in the environment that knows. They don't know the extent to what you know, but they do know what you expose. That was very good that you did that.
It's crazy. I mean, the whole thing, he felt he was picked on because he was black. So that's why we went to court. And the person didn't show up, so he was dismissed. And they said, you're dismissed, so we left the courtroom. And then when we got downstairs, we realized, like, well, we don't have any paperwork. How do we, prove this, that, and other? So when we went back up the steps, the same white bailiff was outside. He was like, I was like, did we get a paper? He just said dismissed. And the black man was like, well, you just jumped up and ran out of court. The white man was like, you just ran out of court. We weren't going to chase you there. I was thinking, I said, you know what? I don't do this on a regular basis, so I wasn't sure of the process.
Right.
And he just kind of looked at me like, I'm like, I'm the wrong one.
Right, yeah.
I'm the wrong one.
See, he knew you knew. Well, he heard your, what you were saying. And so he knew that here's somebody that I may not want to.
But don't assume because I'm black that I know the whole court process because I do it all the time. I'm like, you said dismiss. Everybody else who was trying to work it out or something, he told them, go sit over there. Go sit over there. Well, my son was finished. He said, you're dismissed. Dismissed means to me that you leave. Right. So that's why we walked out. And the man was like, I was like, I don't do this on a regular basis. So how would I know that? Right. He just looked at me like, I'm like, but it was more than enough.
It's interesting, as I said again, the way that white supremacy works. And although we have determined how it works, it doesn't have to work all the time according to that, because there are many different disguises. But the issue is that when the person is instructed and educated on the psychology of racism, they begin to pick these things up. And when you're in an environment where it happens, introduce first. I studied the racism of psychology of racism. And this is something that happened in class, and you're doing it. And then you can decipher it. But that's what we got to do. Let's see what I'm trying to since no one is presenting today, or is anybody presenting? Okay, then we're going to go to Dr. Marimba Ani, and she's going to educate us on the asili, and that is the desire of the European to control the world. Our book is Urugu. There's also some paperwork on Urugu if you don't have it, so you can look at that and make sure it's an African-centered perspective on European culture. Here we go. Now she's on the program called
Cultural Thought and Behavior. We continue our discussion of Plato's use of writing as a political tool.
what Plato was setting up was that you could use the written word to intimidate people.
We also want to take notes
and have them feel that something was
for
truer
dialogue afterwards.
because it was in writing. Okay? Now, that wasn't always the case. Because at the time we're talking that he is writing and doing his work, you know how many people were reading? Not many. And that took a long time until the Gutenberg Galaxy, where you had many, many more books available, or the Gutenberg Bible, that it was made, the printing was such that there could be, books, and primarily it was the Bible, available to people on a large scale. But you're not dealing with primarily a population that was reading. Still, the way the chain of command worked, it was that those who were in a position to intimidate those who were not. You see, it wasn't, people mistake that. They think that it was Plato's objective to have everybody reading. That was not the case. His objective was to have them intimidated. That is, the people in the cave. I don't know if you know about his metaphor, but the people in the caves are the people who live in darkness, who can't see, to be intimidated by those, the philosopher kings who are outside of the cave, who are in the light, who can see. And writing was very much a part of that. And it was a part of helping him to standardize this concept of truth. Mm-hmm. Okay?
Now, the purpose of writing now, ulterior and otherwise, is there any connection there today?
In the sense that we have to understand, we've got to be a multimedia people. Okay? Writing is very important. I'm not going to tell you it isn't. Books are very important. They're also very limited. You see? That is only one way of, if I write something, then I shouldn't be relying just on a literal interpretation of what it is I'm saying. If I do that, that's very closed. When you write poetry, when we compose music, okay, when we drum, all the things that we do, it allows for much more than a literal interpretation, so that we're able to get to a deeper level of reality. And all I'm saying is that we should not close out these other modes of expression, of communication, that they're very important. What we're doing now is very important. We cannot rely merely on the written word. Okay, and I think that there is a tendency for us not to understand that, for us to not understand the power that is in other modalities of ways in which we express ourselves, and even in the way that we use the written word, because our people did that. We used writing, but we used it in a more symbolic way.
Okay. What is the Europeanization of human consciousness?
It is the acceptance of what I'm calling the objectification of the universe, the materialization of the universe, so that again, spirit is denied, spirit is mistrusted, it is relegated to an inferior position. And what happens is then we think in ways that facilitate our oppression. We think in ways that deny our spiritual power. That's what I call the Europeanization of our consciousness, and that has been talked about by other authors. Asante talks about that. But it is a consciousness which reflects the European.
So someone sitting home might say, well, you know, what's the harm in listening to a little Bach, little Beethoven, getting into some Milton, almost as Milton. What's the harm?
The harm is that if you are a people who have been so conditioned as we have, that we have to even sit here and discuss, convince each other of what are our strengths, what did we lose, what did we have, who are we, in a positive sense, that your focus tends to become that little bit of Bach and that little bit of Milton and a little bit of this, so forth and so on, when you have not indeed understood the African worldview, African philosophy, African conceptions of truth, what African ritual is all about, ancient African history, African culture, that you have not, that needs to be your frame of reference. Then, when you get that little bit of Bach, you have a context within which to place it. What happens with us is the reverse. We have terms, this comes out of the European feeling, the European concept of truth, like classical, okay? Classical is supposed to mean the highest form in any particular culture, right? It's what you value the most. That's one meaning for classical. It also can be a reference point, a pinnacle, a high point. So we are raised to think that Bach, Beethoven, whoever, that represents classical music in a universal sense. That becomes our reference point. We're saying, well, that's the best. Everything else, and now we know we don't enjoy it the most. You know what I mean? We know that. But we feel a little bit, well, that helps to make us not quite, we haven't reached yet. You know what I mean? Whatever that point is we're supposed to reach, we haven't gotten there yet, because we still enjoy all this other music.
We will be refined a little bit.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? That's the danger. The danger is what we know of the culture of our oppressors and the place that it has in our value system, that is the superficial value system, which is a process of colonialism that's being colonized. That's the danger. The danger is that we right now, the position that we're in, the condition that we're in, we need to be putting all of our energies into understanding who we are. Because by understanding that, that's what gives you the posture to be able to look critically at what has been imposed on us. We don't have a place to look critically at it because we are assuming the superiority of it. That's why I thought this study was important. Because all you have to do is get outside of it, study the African worldview, and then you can be in a position to deny that reality.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you this question to finish up with Plato. You would say that Plato played a great role in creating what we today call the European?
Yes.
And for what reason then?
Yes. What I see is that in the development of European culture, which is an ongoing process, in the fulfillment of the Achilles, that there are certain seminal points, seminal thinkers, doers, who at whatever point in history they were at, served a role of solidifying and further developing the definition of what it means to be European. Now, let's look at before Plato. What you have are a lot of European groups. You know, we can look at the Indo-Europeans, who have already, the ascendancy, I think, is in place. Okay? How does it manifest itself? It manifests itself in aggression, meaning this cultural seed that for the Europeans is defined in terms of the need for power in order to achieve fulfillment. Okay? I believe that's unlike any other cultural ascendancy. Okay. So you see aggression. You already see the individualism. It would be good to look at Diop's work, for instance, in terms of looking at the features of what's called the Indo-European or the Northern Cradle. Okay, so you already see these things. However, it cannot become the world dominant power that it needs to be because they're not unified. Okay, so what do you need? You need something to begin to say to these people, you are one. You can gain more power by coming together. Because when you've got this strong destructive tendency, which is something that I talk about, in the book, you see, there's an innate destructive tendency. You've got this individualism because we've already talked about the separation of the human being, right? You've got this aggressive tendency. Then if something doesn't bring you together, what will you do? You destroy each other. Okay? Plato comes along and he uses the concept of truth, what would be called an epistemology. That's the only concept of truth. Uses that as something around which people can come together and identify and say, okay, this is going to be us. Now, as I said, that didn't happen right away. You had to fight all these other people that would be dissonant, voices. But eventually, yes, that became what Europeans identified with. They said this way of thinking, this rationalism, this extreme rationalism that helps us to control, it gives us the illusion that we are controlling the future, the past, the universe, and everything. This is us as European people. So he was key at that point. Now, then you get a little later stage, here comes along, so let's look at 312. What they call AD. Here comes Constantine. What does he do? He sees that what you need is a religious statement which will help to achieve this world domination, this power, help to bring these Europeans together so that they can have power over others. So he adopts Christianity, you see. And that gives him the model that he needs in order to say, we have the right, in fact, we have the mandate. He said, he personally has the mandate. And you need to look at his own quotes and the things that were written about him, to go throughout the world and in the name of this one true God, which was them, which was the Europeans, to make everybody into these Christians.
So he's adopting Christianity as a weapon of control.
Absolutely. And as it's compatible with the Roman Empire. On a political level, you've got this empire which is spreading and spreading and spreading, right? He wants control of that. He looks at this religion and he says, that'll do it. That will help me. What I'll do is say, look, there's only one God. Christianity comes along. There are all these other religions in the world. Christianity comes along and says, all the other religions are false. All of them are bad. This is the one true one. Well, that fits. Then he says, I've been placed here to service this one true God. They put me here for this. I've got to conquer people so that they can, be correct religiously.
I hate to do it, but
go ahead. All right, but I have to. Go ahead. What you gonna do? No, I'm just saying. words and his friend Eusebius' words, right? And he takes this course, made everybody make these courses and conquer by this, and they went into battle. They won, and that was it. He said, yeah, this is fact. And I'm saying that at that point in the development of European culture, that was key. That became this solidifying, defining form, institution that would help to bring together. Yes. What was Europe? What was it going to be? All fulfilling these theories. Okay. Then at another stage, you get this definition of science doing this. Again, based on this concept of the object, that we are the scientists. This is the age of science. We are in the forefront of that. And therefore, we have the right to rule the world, really, because we are the scientists. We are the smartest people, most knowledgeable people. The capitalism at one point becomes that which brings together the European self-image and has them working as one, helping to further develop the theory. So at different stages in European development, there is a need, there's this tendency to be fighting each other, you see, and then of course you have all the other people in the world who are also developing and responding to this, so you need ways of controlling them and ways of making sure your troops are tight and together. So you need something to rally around.
I want to ask you about Greek myths and how Greek myths help explain European violence.
Well, I think it probably helps more to not so much explain it, but as to demonstrate it and the need for violence, which I think is part of the appealing. There is well, let's not even look at let's not look at myths. Let's look at let's go prior to that and look at Indo-European mythology. When you talk about Odin and these various gods who were the war gods, who had to be fed by human blood, who rewarded people with this heaven, Valhalla, which was the warrior heaven, which was this great honor if you got to go there. And the emphasis was on individual in battle. And, the bloodier the battle, the better it was, because it made you a better person and so forth. Early Indo-European mythology is replete with or filled with these kinds of images and concepts. Within the Greek culture, we get the same thing, where violence is it's valued. It's sought after. There is some kind of fulfillment that comes out of it. Now, in terms of my analysis, it is that the theory, again, you must understand, is incomplete. So that it's not in harmony with the universe. And I think the concept of harmony is a very important one for us as spiritual people. And so it is like almost what Kobe Cambone says, formerly Joe Baldwin. He says that they come to be, the Europeans, as being outside of nature, outside of that natural universe, which is a state of harmony. And therefore, there's this constant thrust to try to subdue nature, or to see that as an enemy, so that the emphasis is on confrontation, is on destruction, and you see it within Greek culture, as well. so that the theory has to, it forces the collective, the group behavior to be destructive. Now that can bring us to even their concept of progress. We as African people accept this idea of progress, thinking that we've got to imitate Europeans, that everything that is technologically more efficient is better. The higher you can build buildings, the better it is. The more cement that you have, the bigger the cities and so forth and so on. We don't really look at where their idea of progress comes from. It comes from their worldview. And it is really about controlling nature. It is about, and the feelings of power that come from that for them. So we don't get feelings of power by controlling nature. Okay, that's the difference. It is about consuming the universe. Consumption. So that now you get them talking about the problem of, ecological sanity, they call it. That's a very deep issue. But they are not prepared to deal with it because the culture doesn't have the wherewithal to deal with it. You can't deal with the concept of interrelationship of all of us as natural beings in the universe and the balance and harmony when you're talking about things being objects. You can't do that because the way you think doesn't allow you to do it.
What problem does that present for African people? You talked about how Plato influenced European thinking, but here you have African Americans, in a culture where, as you indicated earlier, we were forced in many cases to ape Europeans. How does this need to split the emotional and the rational, all right, to be like Plato? How does that impact on us?
Okay. What it does is that if we talk about having independent schools, which I think is what we need to be doing. We need to be having our own schools because, of course, you've got to educate your own children. But in doing that, we need to be looking at what are the concepts that you're going to use as you develop your children. How are you going to make sure that they are being developed as African children? How are you going to guarantee that it is a spiritual conception of the universe that they learn to use so that they can be, that their energies can be liberated, can be released? What is happening is that we are using these same concepts that you just referred to in dealing with our own children. What does that do to them? You know how we talk all the time about the problem of our children being turned off in school? Your teacher's talking about, I can't reach them. We talk about, this child is hyperactive, and so you want to give them drugs so that you can, control them. What we're doing is trying to relate to our children using alien concepts of not only truth, not only learning, but of the human being, so that the spiritual needs of our children are not being met in those school arenas. Because we've made the mistake of thinking that, see, what the academy means is that you separate out whatever is intellectual from everything else. So that in the European conception, an academy is a place where intellectual things go on and there's no place for anything else. That's not a realistic conception of a human being. Human being is a whole human being. So when you have a child in a school and in a classroom, they are not just this mind that you want to control. That you throw stuff in and you're ignoring the rest of them and so forth. So that we have to find, for instance, I'm going to take something which will seem very simple to you, probably unimportant. That would be good. but to me, it's central, and it's a good example. If we are going to have to look at how do we build buildings? How do we build buildings in such a way that we help ourselves to communicate with each other and with our spirit? And how will that help us to think? How are we going to arrange classrooms? We take for granted that you have to arrange a classroom so that you have these lines of seats. You know, and then we ask the children to, they come in there. You know, we talk about 5, 6, 7-year-olds and they have to sit. And they have to sit absolutely still all the time. There's no other way that they do things. Suppose when we come together, we form circles. You see? Would that make a difference? That's what we have to begin to look at. Is we have to question everything.
She covered so much. You think she gave you as much as Francis wasn't?
Yeah, she did. She talked about a lot. I'm trying to take it all in. It seemed like it went from one. Well, she kind of seemed to skip around. Yeah, and
I mean, they all have the same concept of a different perspective.
They do very much good.
we live in a.
They pretty much agree on the problem and pretty much on the solution. Now they have different theories. She talks about the Sylvia in her book, Urugu. But she says she agrees with Francis Wells. Francis Wells the same host asked her, what should you, said Francis Wells, what should you teach black children about racism? Francis Wells said everything. Of course, Dr. Adi or Aunt Bitches, right there, she hadn't changed her name. That was 93. Maybe even a little earlier than that. Trying to see the credits and what they, what year it is for the copyright. And what she said is we have to question everything, and we do because we've been so culturally conditioned to the European ways. And mostly because, she puts it again, violence. They're very, very violent. They use violence to really convince us that there was no other way to do it. It wasn't so much that they wrote it down, they taught us in school, but the examples that they did to people who did not assimilate or who did not accept the indoctrination was so horrendous that it left a scar on the minds of those who saw what happened. So when she talks about how Plato and writing and so forth and so on, and when she talks about science, how science was used to, as a method of indoctrinating and colonizing us. And the problem is, is such that if we didn't have the innate desire to want to make it change, some people could see it and say, hey, look, that's just too much going on. I might as well just go ahead on and stay enslaved. And that's what happened in slavery. Rather than try to, leave and run and go and, do whatever it was, based on the violence that was associated with the conditioning process. The ultimate way to convince Toby Kente, that to say his name was Toby was the violence in the evening. It wasn't all the other things that they did, but the process of taking 40 lashes and near death was ultimately convincing to the point where he said, well, it's better to live another day so then I can fight and find another way to live. So now, the thing about that was that ultimately he was convinced not to run. When you take a look at science, when I look at the Star Wars movie, in the Star Wars movie, the black person that was in the movie didn't really have any power. I don't mean like the black figure who was the ultimate Darth Vader. I mean say the name because I can't remember his part. Billy D. Williams, he played a character. And in that part he played, he was so weak in terms of being able to stand up for anything. When Han Solo came to him, he sold him out because of the violence that was, perpetrated on those who were under this conditioning process. Now, what's the most violent thing that could, happen to us is probably beyond our imagination, but the thing that now is more convincing is, according to W.E. Du Bois, economic reprisal. If you got a job, you might lose your job. You might not be able to get one, or you might not be able to get money. And then if that doesn't stop you, then ultimately violence will be the thing that changes our minds. So that when we saw King get killed, that was a message to all the other ministers that was trying to use the Bible for freedom. Was this is what you will get if you don't surrender. Not necessarily that is what you will get, but the pervasive notion that Marimba Ani talks about is that how violence has played a significant part in keeping our minds from expanding and growing and being the best that we can be. When we go to the court, the man stepped to him like he was going to do something to him. And, even though he didn't do anything but the effect of, I can, would probably will be. But because your analysis and what you saw and the way that you handled it placed him at a point where he had to well, maybe I better try something else at this point. But it brought to the conscious of everybody around there just what was going on. Because racism, the psychology of racism is a subtle, undercover system in a lot of ways that does things to you that before violence comes. So share with me some of the things that you wrote down. Now we need the class.
Well, I didn't write anything because I really didn't understand what she was talking about.
That's understandable. Some of the levels of disseminating the information to those who we're trying to reach is sometimes beyond our comprehension because it's at such a level that we may not be able to understand.
I mean, I agree with her about, we need to teach our own kids because they're not going to teach them the same thing as school. I mean, I got that. About the better that I had never heard no one explain like that as far as, me, even though I know he's the one, the true God, but just to hear her talk about what it said, exactly.
Did you know about Constantine? Who's the supplement here? The Protestant with Plato. Had never heard anything about how Constantine, took the cross and the Bible and went about. There was a great war that went on once there was a split from the Catholic Church into Protestantism. They were killing each other up for a long time. So, that's what she was talking about. Constantine, and then Constantine, the Protestant ethic. They eventually just really tore up all of Europe with that. It's called the Dark Ages for 200 years. Not much of anything could come out of Europe, and they destroyed all of their resources and everything fighting the religious war. And this is what she's talking about. They were fighting each other and so on. That, but then they were religious. So then they still stuck with the Christian religion, but they built they put the Christian religion together. And then through that religion, as they did in slavery, moving a long ways up, past a lot of stuff that they did in captivity and enslavement with us. They used it once again as another instrument of control. Somebody looks like we should.
We talked about, how we need to build our own schools. Including babies. We, the black people, we can stand on our own. Just like you talking about kids, not just kids, but adults, where most times it's all about what they're trying to make us assimilate. You know? So kids are going to school and getting that type of information. That's just how they reason and think, okay, just go ahead with that. But when we have our own school, we can incorporate that with our kids. Example of what she told us, she saw, you know, in schools like that, they cannot point out stuff like that. They just let it slide. If we have our own school, we can live with the kids. Okay, this is not correct. This is what we should do. You know, providing solutions to the situation, counter that way we make ourselves stronger.
You do, that's an excellent point.
Rather than just teachers talking about, oh, this kid is not listening, they can't even stimulate it, you want to put the kid on medication. You know, that's totally wrong.
Another violent thing to do. That's really terrible. There are numerous children on, I can't think of the drug right now. They've been drugging the children up, but they say that they're hyperactive. Ritalin, right. And they've got other drugs now. Ritalin was like the tip of the iceberg.
Really make the main thing on
And all because they're bored with what they're learning, because what they are learning, and not so much learning, but what's being forced upon them is not something that really is about their culture. It's a total, I mean, it's like brainwashing. It's a brainwash method where, they're in a situation, I've already gotten feeling that. And so, as a result, the children can't be seated. You can't keep them, and then, so, not only did they start giving them Ritalin, but then they went and they're taking gym out of the schools. What is that, an activity for them to be able to run around and,
They take them out of school.
yeah, they've been taken out of school a long time now. Not all of them, they've taken a lot of them.
It's mandatory. No, they don't have the money for it.
That's what they say.
Music, art, a lot of that stuff.
A lot of activities are being taken out.
And when you look at it, it's more popular when it comes to sports.
Yes,
We
right.
kind of dominate when
Right.
it comes to sports. So I'm thinking, why are they taking out,
That's one of the programs where you could still exhibit your talent. It's physical. So now, if most of the children are to exaggerate, if you have children on Ritalin, and a lot of the children on Ritalin are those who will probably participate in athletics. But once you take the athletics away, then you automatically got to have more children on Ritalin because our children are, physical. They have to run, they have to jump, they have to play, they have to touch one another.
So you're against it.
Yeah, I'm against it. Because it actually destroys the character of the child. it destroys the character. It takes from his natural.
It's an easy way for parents and doctors out of the situation. It calms the child down, but if you research, there's a lot of stuff that makes children hyper, and there's a lot of parents who give it to their children like that. That red dye 40, that yellow dye, all of that is bad for you. That makes you hyper. And if you look at these children, because one of my godsons, they think he had his mother. I told her don't give him medicine, but I think she's leaning towards it because he's too uncontrollable for her. And I told her if she cut back on fast food and take some of these dyes out, they say Gatorade.
Right.
It's the sugar. Gatorade is not even good. And there's a lot of children, a lot of autistic children, they eat those cookies, those crackers right there, you know, stuff like that. Everything has that dye. If you cut that out, that'll be part of the calm down situation.
So, okay, because I mean, I've heard that before too. I've heard that you cut out certain things. Now, I know someone that did catch cut out all that stuff, and it still was issues there.
Well, you know, I would, you know, have a second opinion, and I wouldn't take it to a doctor who is in favor of Ritalin because, well, the doctors are connected to the pharmaceuticals, and so the more, that they need the pharmaceutical, the more money that the doctors and the pharmaceutical companies make. And once you start putting money into it, then what's wrong with the child will never be answered, but the money will be flowing. So, and as a result, they'll forget about what's wrong with the child, and they'll just start, placing children on Ritalin just because of money, and not because the child needs it. Which, if you have a hyperactive child, take him in the gym, let him run.
Okay, but you can't do that while we're doing. You can't do that all day long.
No, but if you run
That's
him,
when his mother steps up and say, in his IEP, he needs a one-on-one. He needs those minutes where when you see he get hyper, you gotta get up and walk him out the
But
class
he had
and
a
let him
one-on-one.
walk
We don't
around.
have that one-on-one.
That's
see
what
that,
and if that's in his IEP now, the county's taking it if the parents don't say anything, even if it's in their IEP. But if it's in there, that's when his mother has to step up and say, well, this is written in his IEP and he needs this. Why do he need it? Because he's continuing to get in trouble in class. So he needs somebody who can.
And I'm not, don't get me
You
wrong.
know what I mean?
Yeah, and I'm not for that either. I have this thing when people have tried everything, and I have a cousin, she had tried everything, and it just seemed like nothing is working. And she had got to, she ended up doing something, she ended up putting him on something. But she's been fighting this for like 3 years, trying to do everything else to put him on that medicine. She's trying everything, she said, Mom, I don't know what to do.
well, I got 5 sons, and me and my brothers too. We were all hyperactive,
Right.
and had it not been for a coach that was at the school, and saw me running and jumping and playing and rolling around, came in the classroom one day, and I was doing all of that, and took me and put me on the track team, I would have been Ritalin out. But they didn't have Ritalin in my day. They would have kicked me out of school. So, but the issue is that controlling the individual with drugs, it's just like walking down the street, walking up to the crackhead, the one who sells crack, and say, hey, look, give me your dime back. And you get the same results. So, but it's pharmaceutical, it's over the counter, and it's legal. So the issue is you have someone that's probably a top class athlete, but they're trying to make this kid into something else. And as long as that kid doesn't get the chance to run or play, and doesn't get enough time of it, if he can't get it at home, when he gets away from home, he's going to try to let it out.
But see, he does get it home. She got him to try. So he's running. He's getting some out. We go outside for recess every day. They got PE. He's getting it all out. But it's not that he's like all over the place. He just likes to get up a lot.
He got to get up and
He
walk
likes to
around.
get up. He got to get up and walk. I don't say anything. It don't really bother me too much. But I don't know. I think the mother just got to the point of her wisdom.
You give him another, you can do two sports. If he's got enough energy after one, let him do two. Eventually, it's gonna catch up. He's either gonna be, $1 million baby, or he's.
That's easier said than done when you're the parent that has to drive them to all these things.
He's gonna be $1 million baby, or he's gonna cost you $1 million.
He cuts down on what he eats, what he takes.
Yeah, right.
You know, a lot of kids.
Take that sugar out.
Because he does.
Get rid of the sugar.
He'll come in with a mountain.
Oh, that's
That-
all
that's-
they do.
But his mother don't know that.
How do you know?
And we told her, he be having this mount, if he come in there, I'll be like, oh, God, he got a mountain dew.
Take for example,
He walks to 7-Eleven when he's supposed to go and he come to school, he'll walk to school another time he has.
See, and I've seen the children come to class.
I told
Where
you.
are you from? Mama. And that's when you pat him down in the morning, give me all your money, because you're not getting a soda today. And if your teacher called me and let me know you had a soda, I know you stole it.
Or somebody,
Or
he
somebody bring him
thinks
sugar.
he was saying somebody bought it.
Or she drop him off at school if possible, but
She don't,
And you know what's gonna happen to him when he's older? He's gonna have diabetes.
diabetes, that's the way. And that's the fact, you see, I work in that.
If there's too much sugar,
pharmaceutical industry.
you gotta get it out. See, once you put it in, sugar gotta come out. If sugar doesn't come out, sugar takes over. So that's why diabetes comes, because people don't get it out.
That's it, I don't know if she even tried what you were talking about with the dye stuff. I don't even know if she tried that.
it's not
That's
do
it.
this.
That's
You know how much, I'm sorry to say, but that can right there has at least 30 grams of sugar. And you know what it takes to squeeze 30 grams of sugar into that little can? A lot of people don't know this, but the food and pharmaceutical industry, they work hand in hand
They do.
with the doctors. All the doctor has to do, back in the days where doctors all they do is endorse that medication, that's it. I mean, it still happens now, but not as much as it did. But if that kid cuts down on what he takes, especially, a lot of kids prefer to drink all day and have one. And they give you so much energy if you just drink.
That's shrinking. So we have to, again, Andy said, we gotta make our own schools, and we gotta make our own solutions for our children. I've heard some of the scholars say that we gotta have a plan for our children. We gotta have a plan for us. We have to make whatever it is that we need. And we have the brain power now. See, the only thing keeping us from doing what it is we need to do is this cultural conditioning that we've been in all this time. And we can see our way out of it now because we're getting educated about it. We're taking the correct instruction. We know that there are fields of studies that we found it ourselves to undo this mess. And we have to pursue them, we have to get in them, and we have to use them. Because as long as we continue to use it the way that we've been doing, it's going to be catastrophic.
But my issue is it's not just us that has the problem. But when a white child does the same thing that a black child does, there's a reason for it. When we do it, we're just disruptive.
Right.
And that's why I have an
That's
issue.
racism right there.
Yeah, I used to take my kids to the doctor, and my son had an issue with his eyes that he needed some type of therapy. So I had to go to an affluent area. And I would take all my children. I have 4 children, so all 4 will go to the eye doctor and me, because I take knock out everything at one time. And when I came out, because I was at home, I told my kid, I'm going in here. You know what you need to do. And I went in and got my eyes checked, and the lady was amazed. Why? Your children sat so nicely, and I always did this when I saw a white child acting a fool. I would tell my children, if you would ever act like that. And the lady was like, I can't believe, and I looked at her and I said, why? Why can't you believe what they said? So I said, because I asked them to do that.
Right.
And she was just, I mean, utterly amazed, but I know what they see, what they're conditioned with, that our children are hungry, that our children can't behave, and I was like,
That's called stigmatic injury.
yeah, and she was like, the children are always so good when they come. I'm looking at her like, but I mean, the white children would be climbing across the table, would be doing, and I was like,
But you know what, honestly, I think I know, I ain't saying we, I say sometimes we do stereotypes too.
Yeah, you know,
oh, we do,
we-
I know I do.
The effect of racism on us causes us to do and act the way that they do. That's the process. That is the reward for the process on us, that we will act in the way that we've been conditioned to act. And it's been going on for, I'm saying 400 years, but really longer than that. That's just, 400 years. So what are we talking about? Your mother, your grandmother, your great-grandmother, and your great-great-grandmother, and then even your great-great-great. You understand? And so, once the emancipation came, the system didn't stop. It's just there was a release of the physical. It wasn't a release of the mind, the heart, the soul. See, all of that has been conditioned. So we have to undo this thing by Dr. Marimba Ani, Dr. Wilson, and all the scholars that have left us the information for us to get out. And that's where we begin. And first, we got to deal with us first. And as we deal with us, we're in such a situation. We have to do it simultaneously. When we release ourselves from something, we can't wait for the total process. We have to begin to apply it as we release it from ourselves. And then when we've got the total thing, then we can bless others. But we have to do it as we go along. As we find out what it is, then we have to deal with it. And so that's why we say we have to challenge everything. We can't let a thing go by. Because our children depend on us. And we depend on us.
Well, how do you, I guess, get people to understand, like, I have always worked in Catholic schools, Christian schools, the last 2 or 3 years. I worked in a public charter school in D.C. You know the school. She'll tell you, I tell some stories about my children, don't they? And I look at them and I say, these kids, I work in pre-K and preschool, the 3-year-olds and the 4-year-olds, and that's it. And I look at them and I'm like, they don't have a chance. Already at 4. I'm looking at them and the stories they come in with and the things that they deal with, and I'm saying to myself, this boy don't have a chance. Like this little boy had bubbles in his bag, so he called them. He took them out. They were condoms. He's 3. His mother is 20. She's in the 12th grade at Luke Seymour. That's the school for troubled teenagers in D.C. Pregnant with twins. She's pregnant with twins now. Hello, already has 2 kids. The one is 3. The toddler that's under that is 2, pregnant with twins. And he had the bubbles in his bag. And I was like, okay. And the person that came to pick him up, he said, I'm the stepfather. Of course, it's the new baby's daddy. He had on his pajama pants, smelling like weed. That was like, this boy's 3. What chance does he have? Because what he's saying and what he's dealing with.
He might be that,
You know
he
the
might
chance
be
he
that
got.
one.
You know
He
the
might be
chance.
that one.
Teachers tell him every
He got
time,
you.
them adults in his life,
He
there
got
are other
you.
adults in his life, tell him,
He got
this
you.
is not what you do.
He
Right.
You know,
got
when
you.
he go home,
And
when
you
he
know.
go home, if you put this in his head, when he go home, he'll say, my teacher
So
said
what you
that's
do
not what
is-
his mother may say something, but he's still gonna trust in his teacher.
Yeah, I
Right.
mean,
And more so than the mother. But
That-
listen to this.
But he comes in starving. This little boy, nobody ate this food. Nobody ate it. The chicken looked nasty. I would touch it. The little boy picked the plate up and drank the juice. Exactly, that's what I'm saying. And I know, come on now, she got 3 kids. she got an apartment. I know she's getting food stamps. Why is it not eating? What is she doing? Hello? Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Let me say this
She
right.
working, right? She doing
Yeah,
something.
let me say this again. I'm gonna say this again. She got you. Give her a book that you think she needs to read.
Right. Let me tell you,
Just call us and
this
look.
is
Come over here.
nasty.
Here.
She is the
Give her the
nastiest person.
miseducation of
It's, I
the
mean, nasty as far as me.
Give her a book.
She's mean nasty. She doesn't want you to tell her anything. She doesn't
Don't
want
tell her. Give it to her.
She probably did something.
If she's 20 in the
Look,
12th
give-
grade,
you know,
she's
it does-
probably not gonna read a book.
Now, well, okay, she's not gonna read the book. Give her a page or 3. Give her something that you.
But I mean, I look at these kids and I'm
Some of
like,
these articles, give her the privilege distribution scale. Just give it to her.
And these, what she was talking about right now.
Give her this right here. You see
yeah,
this respect?
I mean,
You see
how do
this
you
black
get
lives
them to
movement?
understand that
Give
they're
it to
keeping
her.
us
Let her
down
read it.
by giving you the food stamps and not, you know, how do we get the younger ones to understand that? I don't,
As I said, the things that I'm giving you, the information you're giving, give her a page or 2 at a time.
it's
And you don't have to give it to her. You can just hand it out to the children, say this is a handout that I'm sending home for parents.
Say homework.
My interaction with the parents.
Yeah, give her homework. Say this is homework. Tell your
If
mother
she
to help
reads,
you
she
read.
reads. If she don't,
I mean, that's the problem.
See, and
That's
that's
the
that.
only
I would dare say everything that's been in that bag since September is still in that bag.
Well, but you keep doing it because somebody is going to get it. You understand? I know it's a
feel,
difficult task.
well, yeah, where, I mean, I'm like, he's
Not
free,
an
and I
unsurmountable
just
goal.
don't see where,
As I say,
you can't learn when you come in that hungry. You can't learn. There's one that he comes in crying. What's wrong, baby? I'm hungry.
Call CPS.
Yeah.
But this is the thing. They're already in it
CPS,
because she's mad.
CPS,
Any day he's
Child
out,
Protective
we have to call. Any day he's out, we have to call her caseworker. Then she comes in cussing everybody out.
That's
but you
fine.
call
I'd be
the
like,
caseworker. I mean, so it's just like,
Okay.
but my point is, when
All
are
right,
they
here
gonna
goes
do
another
something?
one.
Because we're already telling
Here
you.
goes another one. Contact the caseworker.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, every time he's out, we have to call him.
Okay.
He's out for a week and a half, and we called and we called and we called.
And so what did the caseworker
And she
do?
called, nothing. And then the mother come in and cuss us out. That's what I'm saying. When is it? I mean, it's probably so many cases. I understand the caseworker's probably overwhelmed. But, I mean, at what point?
It's just
At
like
what
a teacher
point?
with students. You just can't have a class full of
It
students.
takes a lot. It does. But as I
This
said
is
again,
where- this is where the
give
government
her
sometimes
the white
fails.
supremacy
Dude,
privilege distribution scale and let her read it. She gonna read it. What's this?
I'm like, let's be honest. She might not be able to read. Let's
She
be
can
honest.
read. She can
Let's be
read.
honest. She might
She
not
can
read.
Yeah, she can read.
You'd be surprised.
She
You
can
need
read.
somebody to break it down.
Somebody.
I mean,
Right.
usually you ask
That's what I'm
questions.
saying, but you have to, I don't even know, like, most people I can deal with and get them to ease up a little bit. She is the nastiest. I don't care how to speak to her.
Say that again.
She said that we have younger adults. I mean, I don't,
Yeah, the
Because, you know,
an idea.
yeah, I understand.
interacting with an older